Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to break down the law of guardianship. Now, this is a super important topic, especially for those first-year exams, so let's just dive right in. So let's start with a really basic question, one that this entire area of law is designed to answer. A minor, by definition, just doesn't have the legal standing to handle their own affairs. So, who steps in? Well, that's exactly where guardianship comes into the picture. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly is guardianship? Because, it's way more than just looking after a child. It's a whole formal legal framework with very specific rights and very specific responsibilities. And the law is actually super clear on this. If you look at the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act of '56, it lays it all out. A guardian's role can be about the minor's person, that's their physical care, their well-being, their upbringing, or it can be about their property, so their financial assets, or, and this is pretty common, it can be about both. So here's the bottom line. We're not just talking about meals and a roof over their head. Think of it more like a legal shield, right? This whole system is built from the ground up to protect people who are legally vulnerable, making sure their personal and financial interests are safe until they're old enough to handle things themselves. Okay, so we know what a guardian is, but how does someone become one? It turns out there isn't just one way. The law actually sets out a few different paths to taking on this role.
There are basically three main ways this can happen. First, you've got your natural guardian, and that comes from the relationship itself, parent and child. Then, you have what's called a testamentary guardian, who is named in a will. And last but not least, there's the court-appointed guardian, where a judge makes the call.
And this table here, it's gold. It breaks it down so clearly. Just look at that source of power row. It tells the whole story, right? For a natural guardian, the power comes from the family relationship. For a testamentary guardian, it comes from a will. And for a court-appointed guardian, the power comes straight from a judge's order. This is definitely something you'll want for your notes. Okay, so once someone is a guardian, what can they actually do? And maybe more importantly, what are they required to do? This is a really important balance to understand. It's all about authority versus responsibility. And this slide just nails it. It really is two sides of the same coin. On one side, you have the powers, the authority to manage property, to represent the minor in court, all of that. But, and this is a huge but, on the other side, you've got the duties, an absolute obligation to act in the child's best interest, to take care of them, and to avoid any conflicts of interest. With great power comes great responsibility, right? And just so you know, all these powers and duties we're talking about, they're not just made up. They're laid out in the law. And for your exams, you absolutely have to remember the big one for Hindu law on this topic, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act of 1956. That's your go-to citation. Okay, theory is great, but how does all this play out in a real courtroom? Well, let's talk about a game-changing case, one that totally reshaped how we think about natural guardianship. We're talking about Geetha Hariharan versus the Reserve Bank of India. Seriously, you have to know this one. This quote right here, this is the heart of the whole judgment. It completely flipped the script on what it means for a mother to be a natural guardian. This is the kind of judicial interpretation that doesn't just decide a case, it evolves the law itself. So what happened here? It all started with something pretty simple. Geetha Hariharan, the mom, tried to buy some RBI bonds in her son's name, and she signed the application as his guardian. But the RBI said, nope, sorry, the father has to sign. They claimed that under the law, only the father could be the natural guardian while he was alive. So she challenged it. So this brought the whole thing to a head. The entire case boiled down to the meaning of one tiny word, after. In the act, it says the father is the guardian and after him the mother. Did that mean only after the father's death, or could it mean something else? This was a huge deal because it put a traditional reading of the law right up against the constitutional promise of gender equality. And the Supreme Court's decision was huge. They went for a really smart, progressive interpretation. They said, you know what? After doesn't have to mean after death. It can mean in the absence of. So if the father is just not in the picture, for whatever reason, the mother can absolutely be the natural guardian. And in doing so, they reinforce that number one rule. The welfare of the child is what matters most. All right, let's pull all of this together. If you're studying for an exam, this next part is for you. These are the absolute must-know takeaways. Okay, rapid-fire review. What's a guardian? A legal caretaker for a minor's person, property, or both.
What's the number one rule? The child's welfare, always. The three types? Natural, testamentary, and court-appointed. Don't forget them. The key law? The 1956 Act. The big idea? Powers versus duties. It's a balance. And that landmark case? Geetha Hariharan. It's all about gender equality and the child's best interests. Got it? Good.
So I'll leave you with this to chew on. As society changes and as young people get more of a voice, should this protective law change too? Should that balance of power between a guardian and a child evolve to reflect that? Definitely something to think about. And that's it for this explainer.